Section 07, we're going to talk about these things called ordered pairs. You should be familiar with these. You did quite a bit of this in Algebra 1. You probably were introduced to it in pre-algebra as well. So I'll do like a real quick kind of fly through lesson on ordered pairs. So I've got this thing right here. I actually made this up myself. Isn't that pretty? Took me a while. Actually, let's scooch this up so I can still see the word ordered pairs. This thing right here is called a coordinate plane. Coordinate plane. And we spell it P-L-A-N-E, not like an airplane. Another name that sometimes people call it would be a Cartesian plane. It's supposed to be an S right there. Our Cartesian plane. And that's named after a person. His name is René Descartes. He's a French guy. And I've looked him up, but we don't need to know anything about him right now. If you want to look him up, feel free. René Descartes. I think you spell Descartes like this, with an S on the end. Descartes. René Descartes. Anyway, we are going to call it the coordinate plane, right? Because we have points on a plane, and we call those points coordinates. So that's what we're going to call that. Let's get rid of all this. Okay, enough of that. Let's go through. So this whole entire thing is called a coordinate plane. Let's talk about these. See, these are a little bold. This one in the middle here and this one in the middle here. We call this an axis. This is our x-axis. And this one, this vertical one right here, is our y-axis. So we have two axes. So if I did the plural, I would say AXES. Okay, so that would be, I'll put this PL right next to it for plural. So if you have one axis, you have two axes. And these are our dimensions. This is our one dimension, this is our two dimensions. So this is a two-dimensional figure. Going this way would be one dimension, and then this way would be another. And so there's your two dimensions. All right, sometimes they'll put arrows on the ends of these right here because they're lines. You could also, yep, that's good enough right there. Let's talk about another point. Another pretty important point is this right here where they intersect. Okay, that's a geometry word for you. We're going to use a lot this year. When these two lines cross each other, these two axes cross each other, they hit each other right there. And that, let's put a little arrow right there, and that is called the origin. Origin because this is where it begins. Right, so when we do this ordered pair thing, we plot some points. We start here at the origin. That's the beginning. Origin means beginning, so that's where we have right there. Now what we're going to do, let's see if I left anything else out. Oh, let's talk about this. Almost forgot about this. See how it's broken up into kind of like four different areas? See this X and Y axis right here breaks it up into this area over here, right? So you got all this stuff right here, and then you've got all this stuff in this top left corner. You've got all this down in here, and then you've got all this down in here. Well, each one of those little areas right there, we give it a name. And so this area right here would be a quadrant. There's four of them. So quad, meaning four, and then we call it a quadrant. So we have four quadrants. We start at this top right-hand quadrant, and this is our first quadrant. Okay, we use the Roman numerals for this for some reason. They always do. So this quadrant right here in the top right is the first quadrant. Now, we go counterclockwise. See, a clock would go this way, but we're going to go the opposite way, which would be counterclockwise when we go in order. So this is our first quadrant, and then this is going to be our second quadrant, and this one over here is our third quadrant, and this bottom right one over here would be our fourth quadrant. All right, so it's pretty important to be able to specify, because there's going to be a lot of times a little bit later when we're going to do a lot more with this later on in the chapter, in the book, but when we get to it, you'll hopefully remember some of this stuff. We'll talk a lot about, okay, this point is in this quadrant, it's in the third quadrant. When you do some trigonometry, it's really important that you know about the quadrant. So these are just vocab words that are pretty important. And let's talk about this. Now we start at the origin. Now what we want to do eventually, we want to get to a point. I'll put a point right here. See where I got it lying right there on this, on the grid marks. See how you've got all these horizontal grid marks and all these vertical grid marks? Okay, for the graphs, whatever you want to call them. So it lies right on here. So let's talk about how we get to this. We start at the origin. If I wanted to get to this point, we always go in a certain direction. We're in a certain order. That's why they call it an ordered pair. We go in a certain order. We always go, you can think of it as alphabetical order if you want to. We always go the x direction first, so we go along the x-axis first, and then we go along the y-axis. So if I wanted to get to this point right here, I would start at the origin, I'd start at the beginning, and then I'd always go along the x-axis. So you go horizontally. And we're just going to count over to see how far we have to go in order to get to this point. You're going to go in two directions. Remember, it's like being in a city street, being in New York. And you can't like fly across the buildings to here. You can only go down the streets. So we're not going to like zigzag all like this to this point. The best way to get to it is go along the x-axis first and then go along the y-axis. So if we start right here, we're going to go 1, and let's count how many we go, how many blocks we go over, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we went to the right. That's positive. That's a positive 5. And then we go up to this point. We go 1, 2. So we went 5 in the x direction, and then we went 2 in the y direction to get to this point. Now some people say, why don't you go up and over? Well, because we're going to do this in a certain order. We just want to do this in an order that everybody understands. So we're all on the same page and we're doing it the same way, right? So that's why we're doing it this way, okay? Not sure why they didn't go up and then over. They just decided to go over and then up. Kind of makes sense though, because if this is the x-axis, x comes before y, so you do the x first before you do the y. Now we don't just write 5, 2. It could look like a 52. So what we do is we kind of, these are pairs, right? So we're going to group it by putting it in parentheses, and we're going to separate it, because if you didn't separate it with something, it would look like a 52. So I'm going to separate it with a comma. So this point right here is the ordered pair 5, 2. Notice, any point in that first quadrant right there, what are the signs? Like positive, negative. What are the signs of any point inside this first quadrant? Well, how do you get to any point? Let's say a point way up here. How do you get to that point? You always start at the origin. We go to the right, which is positive, and then we go up, which is positive. So every single point in the first quadrant will always be a positive first and then a positive second. So any point in here, okay, any point inside that first quadrant will be positive, positive. Let's go over here. And again, just think of the signs. What about a point in the second quadrant? How do we get to the second quadrant? We start at the origin, we go to the left, and then we go up. So to the left would be negative, up would be positive. So our ordered pair right here, or our signs in the second quadrant would be what? We go to the left, and then we go up. To the left is negative, and up is positive. So every single point in that second quadrant will be a negative, positive, in that order. Doesn't matter, okay? For instance, let's just put a point right here, figure out where it is. We start here, we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to the left, so that's negative 6, and then we go up 2, 1, 2, and that's our ordered pair. Notice, every single point in here will be negative first, then a positive. All right, hopefully you get the idea on that. Let's talk about the signs in the third quadrant. Well, we go left and then we go down to get to the third quadrant. Go left and down, that's both negative. So the ordered pairs will always be negative. Whatever point you have in that third quadrant will always be negative something, negative something. All right, what about over here in the fourth quadrant? How do you get to this fourth quadrant? You go to the right and then you go down. Right is positive, down is negative, so you go positive, negative. All right. Okay. I think, I'll tell you what, let's do a little bit more with this. Let's put another graph here, clean it up without all that mess around it. And let's do this. Let's just make up some points. What if I asked you to graph, or sometimes they'll say, or I'll put or, sometimes they'll say plot. Okay, plot means take a point and stick it on the graph where it's supposed to go. It's the same kind of thing as graph, all right? Or they just, let's see what else they say, graph and label. It looks like they're just saying graph, but I've seen a lot of places where they say plot the point. It means to do the same thing. So let's graph negative 3, 5. All right. So if I asked you to do this, and we'll call it point A. We'll put an A in front of it and say graph the point A so that it's at the point negative 3, 5. Find the coordinate, okay? Find where it's located here. So where do we start? We always start right here at the origin. Don't put a point there though, but just put the pencil there. And look what we're going to do. We're going to go negative 3 and 5. Remember, you always go in the X direction first and then you go in the Y direction. So we're going to go to the X direction, negative 3 places. That means we go to the left 3 places. 1, 2, 3. Don't put a point yet. Just keep your pencil there and look at the ordered pair. We go, Y is 5, so we go up 5. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right there. So I'll put a point, and then I'll label it. That's point A. So they might ask you to label like 4, 5, 6 different points. So you don't just want to put all these dots all over the place. You want to put the dots so that you have, you want to label those dots, label those points with a capital letter. All right, that's how we do it. Sometimes they'll do this. Sometimes they will, they'll actually put a point right here, let's say. I'm just making this up. All right, let's not make this A again. Let's make it B. All right, so that's point B. And they're going to say find the coordinate or find the ordered pair. All right, a lot of times they'll say find the coordinate of point B. What does that mean? It means write the ordered pair. Find out where it's located. That's what it means to find the coordinate. You find the location of it. So where do we start? Always at the beginning, at the origin. How do we get to this point B? You always go in the X direction and then you go in the Y direction. So in order to get to that point, we start here and we go to the right in the X direction all the way to here. So let's count over and see how many that is. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that's 4 right there. And it's positive because we're going to the right. Let's find out how far down we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now we went down 5. Down is negative. So it's negative 5. And that's our ordered pair. I'll put a B next to it. So point B is the ordered pair for negative 5. All right, what if you're on one of the axes and not in a quadrant? What if you were like right, let's put one right there. Okay, let's put a point right there, and let's find the coordinate of that point. Well, let's think about this. Remember, I'm going to put an ordered pair here. Start at the origin at the beginning, and I got to get to this red point. So I'm going to start here, and obviously I'm going to go to the right. Let's count how many. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But now how far up and down do I have to go in order to get to the red dot? Nowhere. I'm already on it. So I've gone 6 to the right, and I don't have to go anywhere up and down. So how far is that? That's 0. So you don't just put a 6, put 6, 0, because that says you go 6 along the x-axis, and then you don't go anywhere along the y-axis. You go 0 on the y-axis. So this point right here would be the ordered pair 6, 0. What about the origin itself? What would the ordered pair be of the origin? Well, you start here and you go nowhere on the x and you go nowhere on the y. So guess what that is? The origin is at 0, 0. All right, and let's do one more. What if I asked you to plot, or let's say, I think they're using the word graph. Okay, so let's use the word graph. So what if I asked you to graph 0, negative 3? Where do you start? Always at the origin. Now what's this say first? I go 0 in the x direction. I'm like, okay, I can do that. I don't even have to move. Now you go negative 3 in the y direction. Well, negative in the y direction means I'm going to go down 3 places. 1, 2, 3. So you put your point right here. They'll probably give you a letter, call it point P, then you would put the point P right here. All right, so they could do a couple different things. They could actually give you the points on the graph and you have to tell what the coordinates are, like this. Or they can give you the coordinates and you have to graph it. Make sure you label it so you know which points are what. All right, so that's kind of cool. Learning how to plot the graphs. All right, let's do something else. Let's clear this. All right, let's take a look at this one. This one's a little bit different. Now, throw a couple words in here that I don't really agree with the book doing this because they haven't defined these words. They haven't even told you what these things mean yet. They will in chapter 1, but they haven't yet. So but I'm going to show you what it means. Okay, it says graph a polygon. A polygon is just basically a shape. Okay, think of that, just a shape with all straight sides. Okay, no curves or anything. Graph a polygon with vertices. Vertices is plural for a vertex. So if I had like a square, the points where those lines come together would be a vertex. So graph a polygon with these vertices. They give you 4 points. There's A, B, C, and D. So what you need to do, what they basically want you to do is just plot the 4 points and then connect the points to make a figure, okay, a polygon. And that's what they're going to have you do. Basically, I'm more concerned that you just know how to plot the points. We'll worry in chapter 1 about what a polygon is and what the vertices are. All right, so let's do this one, negative 3, 3. We'll do it a little quick here. Start at the origin, we go negative 3, 3. So to the left 3, 1, 2, 3, up 3, 1, 2, 3. So that right there would be point A. Oops, I got to change something up here in my little menu bar. And let's make that, okay. So that is point A, and we'll put an A next to it. And then point B is 1, 3. So we go to the right 1 and up 3. 1, 2, 3. That's point B. Point C is 0, 1. So you don't go anywhere on the X, and you go up 1 on the Y. That's point C. And then point D is negative 4, 1. So we start at the origin, we go to the left 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and up 1 right there. And that is point D. I'll put D right here. Now it says graph the polygon. That doesn't look like a polygon right now. It just looks like 4 points that are being labeled here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to connect them. So watch. I'm going to take this one and connect it to that. Let's make it a little bit fatter so you can see it a little bit better. Then we're going to take this one here, connect it here. Then we're going to connect it to D, and then we're going to connect it to A. All right. And there it is. Tell you what, let's enlarge it just a little bit. You can see a little bit better here. And there it is. That's the polygon, and those are the vertices. Do you see how those lines come to a point right here? That point is called a vertex, and I've labeled them, and that's basically all they want you to do. Let's do one more, and we'll be finished this lesson. Okay, here's the last one that we're going to do. This you're going to have to think back to Algebra 1 a little bit. They kind of assume that you already know some of this stuff, so I can't really teach this like from complete scratch, okay, from the beginning, but hopefully you have a little bit of Algebra 1 knowledge on this stuff right here. It says graph 4 points that satisfies this equation. Y equals 4 minus x. If you remember from Algebra 1, we did a little chart. Do you remember that? Little XY chart. That's a little squiggly, but that's okay. Put an X and a Y here. So what we're going to do is we're going to figure out what points work for this. So what we're going to do, we are going to pick some values for X and then figure out what the Y is going to be. All right, so I can just pick any points that I want to. Now I don't want to pick outrageously large points because I want to kind of stay within my graph here. I don't want to pick 57 or 1024 because it's not going to fit in this graph. Let's kind of pick numbers that you think might possibly stay on this graph. So let's just start with, let's do a couple negatives, like -2, -1. Let's try a 0, a 1, a 2, a 3. That's good enough. Well, it says 4, doesn't it? So, I don't know, we can do more than 4, it's not going to kill us. So let's just do some more, because I want you to see what's going to happen to these points when I just pick any value for x and then figure out what the y is going to be. Now remember, my formula is y, or my equation is y equals 4 minus x. So what I have to do is I have to take this -2 and put it in for x. So what is this? It's going to be 4 minus x. What's x? It's -2. What's 4 minus -2? It's +6. So my ordered pair, this is actually an ordered pair. You got an x and a y. It's going to be -2, 6. Let's put a -1 in for this. 4 minus -1. See, we're doing the same exact thing. We're just doing it with a different x. 4 minus a -1 is +5. Put a 0 in for this. 4 minus 0, which is 4. Put a 1 in for that. 4 minus 1. See, all we're doing is taking x away from 4. 4 minus 1 is 3. You kind of get a pattern going here, you see. 4 minus 2 is 2. Let's do one more. 4 minus 3 is 1. So here are our ordered pairs. I've got -2, 6 that I'm going to plot. I've got -1, 5. You get the idea here, but let's just draw them out. You got 0, 4. You've got 1, 3. 2, 2. And you've got 3, 1. Now this is pretty interesting once we start plotting these things. Okay, right now you're like, ah, big deal. But it is kind of interesting because watch what happens. Let's plot these. Just do them real quick. Negative 2, 6. 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. After staring at this screen, these lines feel like they're just vibrating or moving or something. So hopefully I'm counting right. Negative 1, 5. So negative 1, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. No big deal right now. Okay, it's just 2 points on the graph. Big deal. Let's do another one. 0, 4. So I go 0 on the x and then go 4 on the y. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now it's starting to get a little bit interesting because look, these first two line up with this third one. So all three of them actually line up. That's kind of cool. Let's see if it keeps on going, it keeps on happening. I got 1, 3. Start the origin, go to the right 1 and up 3. 1, 2, 3. Look at that. Still lining up, isn't it? It's not like they're just random points all scattered all over the place. 2, 2. So I go 2 to the right, 2 up. Same thing, right? I'm seeing a pattern. 3, 1. 1, 2, 3, 1. There you go. And if I stuck a 4 in here, what's 4 minus 4? It's 0. So what would that be? It would be 4, 0. It would be like this. What's happening here? You obviously see it, don't you? I'm getting a nice straight line, right? And I could extend that one. Oops, what did I just do? Let's try that again. There we go. Okay, I extend that up, and look, I got a nice straight line. Every single one of those points, it doesn't matter what points I pick for x, it's all going to line up on that straight line. They're getting you ready for something in another chapter. That chapter won't be for quite a while now, but again, you've seen this in Algebra 1, so it should be kind of familiar to you there. All right. Okay, I hope that makes sense to you. And I'll tell you in class what problems you're going to do. On some of these, I've been writing down like what problems on this lesson, but I think I'll just wait for class to tell you what problems you need to be doing on this. All right, we'll see you in class.